So I was checking the inbox over on the Facebook page and I was sent a link to an article about the Nintendo Switch online service. Now the person who sent in the link, they did ask to remain anonymous if I made a video about it, but I still want to say thanks to anybody who sends in interesting links to articles such as this. I really do appreciate it. Now this article is from videogameschronicle.com, and it's not a website that I personally check at all, but I know it has its fans, and the article I was sent was published on the 29th of October of this year, and it was an article discussing games which will likely never come to the Nintendo Switch online service as part of the expansion pack. And as most of you will know, that is something I covered in a video a while ago now. Now, I'm always interested in hearing other people's views, and especially at the moment there's a ton of N64 related news out there right now. And I do find that I enjoy spending more time than usual perhaps reading this sort of stuff. And so firstly I want to say thank you to the author of this particular article, who's a chap named Chris Scullion. He's a Scottish chap. I think he used to work for, it might have been the official Nintendo magazine, but don't quote me on that, I'm not 100% sure, I just remember the name ringing a bell. So he brings up some of the same games that I mentioned in my video that I made, and also for the same reasons, which, you know, is pretty cool to see. But he mentioned many others that I didn't mention, and he had some really good reasons as to why those specific games he mentioned wouldn't see the service. So it really is an excellent read. However, one of the games on the list immediately caught my attention, and that was Clayfighter 63 1/3. And I guess you could also throw in Sculptors Cut into that mix as well. Now, like me, you're probably thinking that it might be due to some unusual licensing issue, or some legal issue about who actually owns the IP or who owns the rights to the game now. But when you actually read the article and the explanation, it actually made a lot of sense to me, and I'd never looked at the game in this light before. Now, one of the things that I love is really to have a good conversation with many of you in the comments down below. I probably spend as much time replying to people as I do making videos, and so this is going to be more of a debate type video today. It's a little bit more unscripted, and so more than ever I'd be really interested in hearing your views on this. I would just say though, in a very polite reminder, to be respectful to one another in the comment section. I know this is the internet, there will always be people with a different point of view to you, but I would appreciate here if everyone can keep it all above board and keep things sensible, and hopefully we can have a serious discussion. So I'm going to link up the article in the description box for anybody who does want to go ahead and read it for themselves, and I do recommend that you do that. But I'm just going to read and focus on the section that was around Clayfighter. And also the footage that you're watching is Clayfighter 63 1/3. For anybody interested, it's on Psycho difficulty level, so the insane amount of blocking by the opponents is pretty much par for the course. Now, the reason that Chris doesn't think this particular game, which is Clayfighter, will ever show up on the service is due to culturally inappropriate content. So I'm going to read sort of what he explains here. So the Clayfighter games may not exactly have been the pinnacle of one-on-one fighting game, but their quirky sense of humour and claymation art style earned it a cult following that remains to this day. You'd be forgiven for thinking that Clayfighter 63 1/3 has a good shot at appearing on Switch Online, given that Claymates, a platformer by the same developer, came to the SNES library earlier on this year. However, even though the first two Clayfighter games have seen recent re-releases on the likes of the Evercade console, 63 1/3 is a slightly different matter, because one of its characters is pretty questionable by modern societal standards. The fighter in question is Kung Pao, a Chinese martial arts chef who ticks every stereotype in the book and has awful mock English lines such as, "Would you like soy sauce with that?" It was bad enough in 1997, but a quarter of a century later it doesn't fly in the slightest. Now, he also goes on here to put in a little bit of an added extra, so he says also see. So again, I'm going to continue reading. There are also a handful of other games with dated stereotypes that would raise more than an eyebrow were they to be released today. Platform fans may want to see Gex 64, but its Kung Fu themed stage has some questionable Chinese stereotypes of its own. Fighting game Fighter's Destiny may see a Switch Online release at some point, but its sequel Fighter Destiny 2 probably won't, partly in thanks to a character called Abdul who shouts "Save me Allah" when he falls out of the ring. So that's everything that he wrote for that specific game. Again, it's a much larger article, do go check it out, but that's what I wanted to sort of hone in and focus on for this particular video. And so I want to know what your views are, to be honest. Now, I've read similar news recently. I think it was Disney Plus, they had issues when they uploaded some of their historic catalogue, and I think they had to put warnings up before movies like Dumbo. And I also think that they changed the name of Boba Fett's craft. I think it used to be called a slave. It's going from my mind, so I can't remember what they renamed it to, but I remember reading it thinking the new name they chose was pretty whack. But anyway, heck, if you really want to go out there, I was actually reading the news here in the UK just yesterday, and it had an article about how a school production of Grease, the musical, you know, the John Travolta old school film, they cancelled a musical production of that because students said it was derogatory towards women and sexist as a whole. And so I often wonder that the Nintendo 64, I often think of it as one of the less controversial consoles around, really. But when somebody highlights things such as this, does it make you reconsider some of your childhood games? Now, I'm genuinely interested if anyone's decided to stop playing a game. It can be new or old, you know, it doesn't just have to be Nintendo 64. But if anybody stopped playing a particular game after they've seen something as what they consider to be culturally inappropriate. Or I'm also interested to hear how you think historical games such as those mentioned in today's video should be handled moving forward. Now, you know, some people there might think, or, you know, well, you let me know, do you think an outright blacklist of these games should exist to stop them, you know, sort of reappearing and being sort of redistributed? Or do you think that maybe the Disney Plus treatment of any future re-releases should include said warnings, you know, before, you know, for example, if Clayfighter was put onto the Switch Online service, if they would have a, you know, a bit of a black screen just saying, you know, this was appropriate. Well, I don't even think it was appropriate for its time, you know, looking back now, but I hadn't thought of it until today. But you kind of get what I'm going at, you know, if they should put sort of disclaimer warnings, or do you think that they should just completely stay clear? As I said, have a bit of a blacklist for anything such as this. But that's enough of me talking. I'm going to join you down in the chat section down below, and until next time.